Welcome to the July the 23rd, 1996 taping of It Happened in Grand Prairie. We are delighted to have you in our viewing audience. We are very privileged today. We have a very special couple that are very meaningful to our city and to its history. This is our history tape number 282, and we're just so delighted to bring Mr. and Mrs. John Wright as our guests today. Topsy, welcome to the set.
Oh, thank you.
Wonderful. And Your Honor, John Wright.
My goodness.
We are just so glad to have you back with us a second time. And they always say if you don't do it right the first time, let's just try this one more time. Well, we did your interview right the other time, other than the fact you did not have pretty Miss Topsy with you. So some wonderful things happened over the weekend when we had the dedication of the Nazarene Church on Southeast 8th Street, which is Beltline Road to some of us and 1382 to others. And that was the congregation in Grand Prairie, Texas, that your mother, Annie Wright, began. And we were so excited to be a part of that history. So we just had to have you back, Mr. John.
Well, thank you.
And as a former wonderful state representative for the state of Texas, representing District 106, we're just so glad to have you here, and we're honored that you take the time today to bring Topsy with you. We're so glad to have her. John, tell us a little bit about yourself. Name your parents, and I know you have a sister. Name your sister, and let's establish that genealogy so we'll have all that in this one tape.
Well, let's see. My name is John Robert Wright Jr., and I have a John Robert Wright III, and I have a daughter, Martha Wright, who is a law partner of mine. And my mother, of course, as we were talking about, is Annie Wright, and it's not with an I, it's A-N-N-E. And she was a tailor, and the Taylors were from Virginia, and they moved to East Texas. And my father came after the Civil War with his family to Terrell. And my dad was a professional baseball player, and met my mother, and there was some 15, 18 years difference in their ages, but they had two children, myself and my sister Nell Frances Wright Council.
Okay.
And then we have an adopted brother who I'm very dearly fond of, Tommy.
Okay.
Known by Tommy, but whose name is Merton Thomas Wright.
Yes.
He was in Hope Cottage, and my mother found him, and he came to live in our house, and we all became attached, and he was adopted.
Yes, that is wonderful. All right. And John, when you were growing up, where did you attend school?
I went to high school in Dallas, and I went to elementary school in Dallas. I went to Stephen F. Austin Elementary School on the corner of Gaston and Washington, which is adjacent to and part of now the school is of the Baylor Hospital. It is the Healthcare Education Center. And then I went to Crozier Tech High School in Dallas and graduated there. But all that time I'd had close connections with Grand Prairie because we had family here and owned property here.
Yes.
On the edge of town, a little small farm.
And what age were you when you came to Grand Prairie, Texas?
Well, the year I graduated from high school, I moved with the family, then moved to Grand Prairie on the edge of town at actually 1710 Small Street, which is where
Yes.
the Nazarene Church was started.
Yes.
Then we sold, and that was in 1946. And then we sold the land that joined the premises, the house that we still own. We sold that to Immaculate Conception Church, where
Yes.
it is today.
Yes, that's wonderful.
And then now the house that my mother and I and family lived in is a daycare center.
Yes.
We still own that.
Yes, and that daycare center was very important to us because when we were younger and our children were young, they were in that nursery school. It is just amazing the things that happen to you over a lifetime, isn't it? Well, we're going to get back with you in a few minutes, Mr. John. We gave you a lot of good coverage on your last interview, but we need to get a little bit more about Miss Topsy, and we'll come back with you in just a few minutes. And Topsy, tell us about the real Topsy Wright. Establish your genealogy, and that's your candle.
Mother and Daddy were married in 25, I think. My father, too, is about 15 years older than my mother. Okay. They were married in Denton, but they went directly to his home in Nocona, Texas, Nocona.
All right, you would establish your father's full name and your mother's full name, including the maiden name.
All right. My father's name was Olin Grover Roberson, and he was born in Tennessee. Came when he was about 4 with his family to Grayson County.
All right.
And when he was about 18 or 19, moved to Montague County with his family. Was a cotton buyer and a gin owner.
All right. That's exciting.
And an ardent baseball fan. His brother, younger brother, he coached, and Uncle Charles, his brother, pitched the last perfect game in the major leagues for the White Sox before Don Larson pitched his in 1956, and Uncle Charles was in 1922.
Wow, what a record. Isn't that wonderful?
So he didn't stay in baseball very long, though. He never had another really good day.
Okay. Your mother's full maiden name?
Mother's name was Madge Henderson, Henderson.
All right.
And she was born in Aubrey, Denton County.
Okay. Did you have any brothers or sisters?
No.
You were the only child.
I was the only child.
Pampered and petted and loved. Isn't that wonderful? All right, and where did Topsy, where were you born?
I was born in Denton. Mother went home to have me.
Okay. All right.
So
Denton.
I was born in Denton, and my first car trip after the trip back to the boarding house where they were staying was to my grandmother's house in Aubrey, where we stayed about, I think, another month, Mother said, and then we went to Nocona.
Would you name your grandmother?
My grandmother and grandfather were Perman, Jay, and Maddie Henderson.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Maddie Conley Henderson.
Yes.
She was a Conley from Clarksville.
All right. And now, what schools did you attend?
Nocona, same building the whole 11 years.
Oh, that's right.
And went to North Texas, where I met John.
All right. Now, let's get back to the Nocona. When you were in school in Nocona, did you have a real favorite elementary school teacher that just was so meaningful to your life? Is there someone special?
Well, yes, there was. All of them were special, and I remember them all, but my third grade teacher was Miss Ivor Leaf. And she married at the end of that year, and we got to go to her wedding.
Oh, how exciting.
And she was I entered storytelling in UIL, is that what they called it then? And she was my sponsor.
When you went on then to high school at Nocona, was there a special subject or special teachers or mentors, someone real
I liked drama and debate.
Okay.
The superintendent, during the war years, everybody taught school when the vacancies came. And the superintendent was our geometry teacher. And he was a masterful geometry teacher. He was a pretty special man. His name was W.J. Stone, and he was the uncle of Jack Crane, who was our All-American at the University of Texas. And of course, Mr. Stone took credit for all of Jack's
Oh, of course.
running up and down the football field.
Who was the one that inspired Topsy Wright then to go on to college there in Denton?
I was going elsewhere. I was going to first Mary Hardin Baylor because that's where I had a scholarship.
All right. In what field?
Just being a Baptist.
Oh, that's good. That helped. All right.
And but in that day and time, you could not get from Nocona, Texas, to Belton, Texas, in a day.
Yes.
And so that kind of had to take second place.
Yes.
I said, all right, I'll go to TSCW because it had an excellent interior decorating department, and that's what I wanted to major in. Was never going to be a teacher.
Texas State College for Women, is that its official name back in the dark ages?
Yes.
All right, let's go.
And at the last minute, I changed my mind and went to North Texas.
Are you glad?
Oh yes, oh yes. Was going to transfer, but the time never came for me to transfer.
And in your time at TSCW, were you an outstanding
I
student?
never went to TSCW.
You didn't go there?
I changed before school started.
Oh, you did? And where did you go then?
I went to North Texas.
North Texas?
Immediately.
Across the campus, really?
Across the
town?
town.
Oh. And at North Texas, tell me about your excitement of North Texas.
Well, had a lot of friends.
Yeah.
We lived in the boys' dormitory because it had been taken over by the girls because the boys hadn't come back from the war by then.
Mm-hmm.
They started coming back in the middle of that 45 term.
Yes.
And so we had to move at midterm. And I moved to a boarding house where my great aunt was the house mother.
Oh, how nice.
And she also did my sewing. So I had lots of clothes for the first time in my life.
And you had a lot of friends because they would come there to do this, get their things sewed
Oh, yes,
also.
yes.
Oh.
And it was right across the street from one of the dorms, and
All right.
and where we moved eventually.
Where did you meet John in all of this interim at North Texas?
Well, I lived at Terrell Hall, and when you lived in one of the dorms, you paid for your room and board all together.
Yes.
And he lived in one of the boarding houses, and they went from that bunch of fellas went to the dorms to eat.
Yes.
And one day, my bunch was in line to eat, and I was the last at the line. And his bunch, and I knew everybody but him. I knew who he was, but we had never met. And so he was the first to come in, and I really wasn't very hungry that day. So keep in mind, mine was already paid for.
Yes.
So we started through the salads, and I didn't take any salad. And he said, "Aren't you going to eat your salad?" And I said, "No." And he said, "Would you get that for me?" So I put it on
Yes.
my plate. Didn't have anything else. Well, it went that way. There was something I wanted. I wanted some vegetables and bread, but he got a fairly half-price lunch that day.
Yes,
and then we all ate together. And
Yes.
then I don't remember when I didn't know him.
And then always he would get in line with you because he knew he would get some free food. If that isn't that conservative John Wright, oh, that is wonderful. What a wonderful way to meet.
And we double dated most of the time we were in college, didn't we? But we were always very good friends, confidants,
Yes.
and stayed that way for 8 years until he got through law school, and I was teaching.
All right, we're going to get back to you in just a minute. We need to bring John up to date a little bit. Now, let's talk about you at college and out scrounging food and the line going through here. John, you're a very conservative young man. All of us in Grand Prairie that know anything about finances know that you're very conservative. We'll put it that way. Along with Mr. Jackson and Mr. Carlisle Smith and the late Mr. Sam Pettigrew, we had them in a little slot here as some of the most conservative young men in town. Tell us a little bit about getting out of school and what you did after that, going to law school.
Well, let me preface all of that by saying Miss Topsy left out a few things.
Oh, good, good.
And she was,
embellish it, will you?
Well, she was sorority president.
All right.
And president of the Inter-Sorority Council.
All right.
Which was exceeding high honors in our day at
Yes.
the University of North Texas. We lived here, as I said, when I was in college. I was the lifeguard at the swimming pool in Grand Prairie.
Yes, in Turner Park.
At Turner Park.
Yes.
And worked for Mr. Lee Herring, who we all
had the
know,
concession there.
And no, Mr. and Mrs. Clay Hines had the concession.
Oh.
Lee ran the swimming pool. Mr. Herring ran the swimming pool.
All right.
I was in school in Denton, and I got hired by Timco. Actually, I got hired to play baseball. But then when the fall came, I knew the people at Vaught, and I got hired as a timekeeper on the night shift.
Yes.
And so I traveled back and forth to Denton and Grand Prairie, all that. Not 4 years, no.
Yes.
But until I found another job. As a matter of fact, I owned a restaurant in Denton while I was in school there.
Yes.
And then left college and wanted to go to law school and applied only to the University. No, I applied to the University of Houston and the University of Texas, but chose the University of Texas because it was closer.
Yes, yes, much closer.
And then when I was there, I waited tables in a boarding house, and I had a wonderful job. Of course, we were graduate students.
Yes.
And so I managed a private dorm for the family that owned the Austin Laundry. I just remember that they were a well-to-do family there, and they gave me the opportunity to live in the dorm free and manage it, so to speak. There are two managers. Each one of us had a night off.
Yes.
And then I left law school and came to Dallas and went to work for a small law firm there, and decided that my best interest would be served if I came back to Grand Prairie to practice law, which I did.
In what year?
You know, must have been 58, 56. I went into practice with Walter Kober. No, with Buster Standifer first, who was a lawyer here. His son Wayne now runs Wayne's Custom Automotive and is a good community member and a friend. I stayed with Buster for a while, and then I went with Walter Kober, and the man that is now chairman of the Department of History at the University of Dallas was Dr. June Welch, who
Yes.
you hear on
yes.
television. So for some period of time, I can't tell you exactly the number of years, we had a law firm named Kober, Welch and Wright. And then I left the firm, and because I wanted to open up my own practice, and I did, and that was on Main Street in Grand Prairie. And so then I built the buildings where I am now, and have been there for quite some time.
And that's located where, please?
At 630 Dalworth in Grand Prairie.
630 down. And you mentioned that that you have a daughter working with you there.
I do.
Shall we let Topsy tell about the grandchildren, or are you going to hog all of that?
No, let Topsy do that. She
All
has
right,
a feminine
Topsy,
touch.
tell us a little bit about the children and the grandchildren. And I believe your son married very recently. So,
Yes, he did. And
let's talk about both of your children.
our daughter was working at the law office, and one of the young lady lawyers was pregnant at the same time, and we have this little country office up there that we've added on to, and so we had just redone part of it, and had an empty room, and John one day said, "Honey, those girls are not going to come back to work until we get a nursery." And I said, "Well, let's go buy some baby beds and put in that empty conference room."
Right.
So we did, and they did, and of course I got to go over there and stay all the time. My office was across the way in another building. And then we had to hire somebody to come take care of the babies, and we were fortunate, and then a client of John's last child was starting to school, and she wanted to go to work, and she speaks a little English, understands quite a lot, but she taught the children. We had bilingual children growing up there in our
That's
little nursery.
wonderful.
And the mothers and the grandmothers could all play with them, and the grandfather. We commented that John got to see more of his grandchildren than he did his own children as they were growing up.
All right, now we're going to have to name your daughter and her husband and the 3 children.
All right. Martha Claire went to Austin College, graduated from Grand Prairie High, went to Austin College, went to SMU, where she met her husband-to-be, we found out, Gary Van Post from Fort Worth.
Yes.
He had gone to A&M and then to SMU Law School. They met about the first day they were there, and by Christmas were madly in love. They waited till they finished law school to marry. They married in '83. And then in '87, their first child, Taylor. The Taylor name, John's mother was a Taylor.
Yes.
Hence Taylor. And she is now 9.
Anne was in the Music Man musical recently, and grandmother and mother and everyone was on the front row, including grandfather.
And the whole show was wonderful.
I knew you would like it. All right, now tell us about the twins.
And they decided they were going to have another child, and only intended to have one more. So a little over 5 years later, they had 2 at once, Kathleen and Jacob. They had twins.
Yes.
And of course, they are just as darling in their own way as Taylor. I have been with Taylor more since she started to school, because I pick her up every afternoon and we do activities together. I'm sure I'll do the same thing with Jacob and Kathleen as Taylor needs me less. But then our 34-year-old son, John Robert Wright III, married his college confidant sweetheart that he had known for 15 years. And
Her name?
her name's Janet Marie Smith.
Okay.
And she is a lawyer. Oh, my daughter's husband is a lawyer in Fort Worth. And now Janet is a lawyer in Las Colinas. And John is a teacher and an actor. He has done special events. He's done lots of advanced work and has traveled most around the world. I think he's never been to China, and that's about it. But Janet has identical girl twins that are 15 months older than Jacob and Kathleen.
How wonderful.
So we have 5 grandchildren now.
Yes, yes, you've caught up with me finally. Wonderful. Let's get back to John. John, what is it like being a wonderful attorney in this city, having the family involved, and even having your wife working in one of the companies that belong to you as a subsidiary? What's it like stem winding all of that, John?
Very humbling, very, very enabling, very privileged. But let me get back to Miss Topsy for a moment.
Would you do that? Help me out.
Miss Topsy was talking about her involvement with Taylor, and in the afternoon she picks Taylor up. Taylor's at camp now. She goes to Camp Mystic for a month each summer. But in the afternoon she picks Taylor up and they practice piano. And then when the day they don't practice piano, Topsy picks up Taylor at school and gets her dressed and takes her to her competitive swimming team.
All right.
And then that's 5 days a week and pretty well fills up the day. But my career here has been a marvelous trade-off on my behalf. I don't get up and go to Dallas in the morning. I drive about 6 blocks to my office and have the privilege of being with my daughter and my grandchildren and my friends, and it has been a marvelous experience.
Having been the president of the Rotary here in Grand Prairie, very involved in the First Baptist Church, very important as our state representative. All of the different avenues that you've been into, you have just been a real tribute to the city of Grand Prairie, and have not only that, you have served an attorney for, I remember you were serving as the head attorney for urban renewal.
Yes, ma'am.
Also for the Grand Prairie ISD,
Yes,
and
ma'am.
I believe your daughter now serves in that position. But let's talk about Topsy. Topsy holds a very important appointed office that we haven't talked about. Tell us about it.
Well, I thought about it a while ago, and then I got
Let it get
carried
away. Let it get away.
In '85, I was appointed to the University, well, it was the North Texas State University at that time, Board of Regents by Governor Mark White. I had served on lots of boards, but never anything of that magnitude, and it was a little awe-inspiring the first day. I got lost coming back home from Denton after my first meeting, and I'd never done that in my life. I wasn't lost, I just made wrong turns.
Yes.
That has been a wonderful experience. I was reappointed by Governor Richards and am still serving, and last year was elected by my peers as vice chairman of the board.
Oh, that's great.
And I love to go to graduation. About half of them like to go to graduation. I'm one of those strange people that get really excited
Yes.
about seeing accomplishment.
Yes.
And so I go to almost all the graduations and do greetings from the board. And then along with that, University of North Texas, and we have changed the name to the University of North Texas
Yes.
since I've been on the board. I'm on the board of the University of North Texas Health Science Center in Fort Worth.
Oh, wonderful.
So that
You're busy
I
With
really am
Taylor.
busy.
with Taylor and the twins. It
I
keeps
don't
you
need
busy.
to work anymore
Yes.
at the office.
That is wonderful. Well, John, I'm surprised you let her out of the cage. We have 1 minute to wrap this up. In the last minute that we have, what do you want to say that's very important? Let's let John talk, shall we? John?
I think I do have something to say that's important.
Right.
I think we have a quality of life in Grand Prairie that is unparalleled by our neighboring cities. I think we're blessed with a marvelous city council, an outstanding superintendent of schools, a wonderful mayor, obviously a very accomplished and accomplishing city manager.
Yes.
I look forward to the next 20 years and hope to realize that the quality of life that we've seen produced in our community continues to grow and excel. I am pleased with the departments in the city, that is to say the police department, and I'm particularly fond of their accomplishments, and I enjoyed my career and life in this community.
Yes. It's been wonderful. Y'all are an exemplary couple. Thank you for choosing Grand Prairie and continuing to be with us and to help us in this community. Thank y'all for the interview.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Lizzie.
And this is Ruthie Jackson reminding you that history is as we live and do. Here for just a moment and let them roll.